The Access to Capital educational series, The Fundamentals of Startup Financing, is made possible by the generous financial support of the Truist Foundation. Access to Capital is an educational program of Verge and its affiliates, RAMP, the Regional Accelerator, Roanoke Blacksburg Technology Council, and its partners, the Launch Place, the Appalachian Council for Innovation, and Blue Ridge PBS.
Hello, James, and thank you for joining us today to talk about early stage fundraising for startups. There's a lot to cover. We're not going to have time to go into a lot of detail, but we're looking forward to getting a bird's eye view on what startup entrepreneurs should consider when raising capital. Can you tell the audience a little bit about VTC Ventures to get us going?
Sure. Thanks. First of all, thanks for having me. So VTC Ventures is a venture capital fund. Actually a series of venture capital funds that are primarily funded by Virginia Tech through the foundation and Carilion Clinic. We invest in startup companies ranging from sort of the seed stage, so post proof of concept, all the way through maturity. Over the life of a startup, we can invest as little as $100,000 and as much as up to 5 to 6 million as that company matures. We invest primarily in the VTC ecosystem, so that's companies in this geography or companies that are doing sponsored research or clinical trials with Tech or Carilion, have alums on the team, stuff like that.
So that sounds like it's pretty flexible. You've got a good bit of range here in the region of what you can invest in.
Yeah, and we're generally trying to weight the portfolio about 50% healthcare and then 50% sector agnostic.
Gotcha.
Within the agnostic bucket, we do a lot of food and ag. Our fund is managed by a larger fund called Midland Capital, which is totally focused on food and ag. So we have a lot of expertise there. And then we also do hard tech, so AI, ML, weather satellites. We've done autonomous submarines, you name it.
That's fantastic. How much money should a startup consider raising, and how do they communicate that goal for a fundraise to people like you?
Yeah, so there's no hard and fast rule in terms of dollars. Every startup has different needs from a capital standpoint. But what every startup needs to do is they need to get to their next inflection point. And that's different for every startup. But what I usually like to tell entrepreneurs is try to raise enough money to operate your company for 24 months. That allows you as an entrepreneur to run the company for 18 months, which is generally how long it takes for you to get to your next inflection point. And then it allows 6 months to actually raise capital.
Okay, so you have some overlap there where they've got a good bit of runway on that next raise to be prepping for it.
Yep. Really, sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower, but on average it takes about 6 months. And as an entrepreneur, you want to be doing that raise with your company at its next stage, not trying to get to its next stage.
Yeah. So how do companies find not just funders for a startup, but the right kinds of funders? Does it matter where they get the money?
Yeah, it absolutely matters. And it matters in a lot of different ways. So, number one is frankly from a personality standpoint. So as an entrepreneur, when you bring an investor into your company, you're going to be working with that investor and their team for years sometimes. Hopefully it's not that long, but often it is. And so you want to make sure that you're working with people that you like, that you respect, that you can trust, and vice versa. So as an entrepreneur, you really should take time to get to know your investors personally, and they're going to be doing the same with you. Second, you want to be looking at their portfolios and their expertise and seeing how much they can help your company or how much subject matter expertise they have in your field. So for example, if you're a healthcare company focused on, say, cancer, and an investor comes along who does automotive parts manufacturing, they're not going to be able to provide a lot of value. Maybe they can in the form of financial advice and oversight, stuff like that. But what you really want is somebody who has experience, developing pharmaceuticals for cancer or selling pharmaceuticals into the cancer market, et cetera.
So how might somebody do that due diligence as an entrepreneur to find the right kinds of funders? What resources should they employ to do that?
I mean, first of all, you can start just by looking at a company's website. Most funds will have their portfolio and a little bit about themselves on their websites. There's public sources of information such as PitchBook, TechCrunch, VentureBeat, AngelList sometimes will have information about investors. And then, don't be afraid to check out LinkedIn or reference your own network and call people who have done business with the fund in the past.
So when I'm planning, I'm an entrepreneur and I'm planning to raise that early stage capital kind of fundraising with funds like yours, what kind of time frame are we talking about from, preparation time to contact with a funder to the time that I actually might be able to see money land in our bank account?
So that's a couple questions. So, first, as I mentioned earlier, it really takes 6 months to raise money. From the day you as an entrepreneur have your pitch deck ready and you start reaching out to investors, that's a 6-month process. Now, it's not 6 months with each investor. It takes time to find those investors. Every fund is different. For us, we can typically do our diligence and fund as quickly as about 6 weeks. But generally speaking, it takes a lot longer than that. I would venture to say that most funds generally take anywhere from kind of 4 to 12 weeks to generally vet an investment.
So say more about what you're looking for in a company founder in particular, the team, but the founder that's coming your way. What do you look for?
Yeah. That's a tough question to answer because it really depends on the sector. So maybe I'll just give a few examples.
Yeah, that would be great.
I would say just one overarching theme, regardless of the sector, is the concept of, a founder's ability to bend reality to their will. The reality of startups is that it's an incredibly high-risk asset class. There are many more failures than there are successes. And so as an entrepreneur or as an investor, I'm looking for entrepreneurs that are going to be able to, run through the proverbial brick wall and get it done no matter what. And that's a very hard thing to vet, but, sometimes you know it when you see it. So that's something we definitely look for. Obviously, a track record of success, while not always indicative, is certainly a strong indicator for entrepreneurs. And frankly, even a record of failure. If that entrepreneur sort of failed in the right way and learned a lot of lessons and is now kind of taking those lessons into the next startup, that's fine too, as long as they demonstrate, like I said, that ability to bend reality to their will. The other thing is for example, in healthcare or in something that has great engineering challenges, we generally want people on the team who have a lot of expertise in that field. And then on the flip side, if it's a company that's more, B2B software or something that you're selling as opposed to developing the first few years, we're looking for kind of a mix of engineering chops as well as sales and marketing experience.
Oh, okay.
Somebody who can really go and, particularly in software, it's a long sales cycle. So you need somebody who's tenacious and who's willing to just stay after clients to make sure they can get deals closed.
Does it matter how many people are in a team?
Once again, it depends on the company.
Okay.
You want a team that is perfectly sized for your company. Once again, going back to the concept of being able to run for 24 months. If you don't have enough people, you can't shrink your way into growth. So if you don't have enough people, you can't grow the company. But if you have too many people, then you run out of money before you hit your inflection point. So that's sort of, there's no right or wrong number. It's based on the runway and the expertise and the people that are there.
So what kind of documentation do small companies need to have that they may not already have drawn up for this work?
The first most important thing is a pitch deck. all companies should have one anyway, but the type of pitch deck for a Series A is a lot different than the pitch deck for a friends and family type of round, or the type of pitch deck that you might use for kind of presenting at scientific conferences and stuff like that. So you want a very specific pitch deck. That's the most important document. From a more formal standpoint, some important things are, the kind of basic legal stuff, articles of incorporation, or I guess certificate of incorporation, bylaws, stock option plans, employment agreements is something that we often see missing. So you want employment agreements with all your employees. Those should include invention assignment agreements, stuff like that, just to make sure that the company has a very tight grasp of its intellectual property.
Can you say more about intellectual property in this space in regard to what resources companies need to have on board? Are you looking to see if they've already got legal counsel involved? Is that part of the due diligence?
Yeah, and I mean, this is going to be a biased answer because I'm a recovering attorney myself, but I view a good lawyer as an investment that a company should make early on. Most lawyers who are startup friendly, and there are many of them in the region, are understand that startups are cash strapped, and they're often willing to work for equity or for very discounted fees to help a company get started. And then you should always, it's like the dentist. If you avoid going to the dentist for years, you're going to have a big problem. A lawyer's the same way. If you stay in touch with your lawyer and make sure they're involved early on, it becomes much easier when it becomes time to raise money.
Yeah. So let's jump to before a company accepts money. So now they've got an offer. What kind of questions should they ask before they accept that money, or blindly go somewhat into an agreement?
Yeah.
Are there questions they should ask? Any cautionary tales we should give our viewers?
I mean, look, the first question you should be asking is, do I have multiple offers? And if you do, then you as an entrepreneur are in a much better position to sort of pressure test your investors. But just generally speaking, number one, subject matter expertise in the field, ability to help the company grow, whether that's customer introductions, talent pipeline, stuff like that. And then, how hands-on that investor is going to be. If you're the type of entrepreneur that's like, I don't want your help, just let me do what I'm doing, whether or not that's right, you're probably not going to get along with an investor who is like, I want to do, bi-weekly calls with you, and I want you to run everything past me. So I think it's those types of interpersonal things that it's really important to get comfortable with vis-a-vis your investor as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because everybody that we've talked to in this series has said some version of that these interpersonal relationships are so important. So I appreciate you highlighting that as well. We really appreciate your time today, James. Is there any last thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience about working on that early raise for a startup company?
In general, I'd say I have two pieces of advice. Number one is don't get too stressed about the nitty gritty and the valuation and thinking, 20 steps ahead. You really only need to think like 2 to 3 steps ahead, and just focus on building a good business. And if you build a good business, the investment piece becomes much easier. So focus on that, and good will come from that. I guess that's one piece of advice, but it's good enough.
It's good enough. Well, thank you for your time today, and we look forward to talking to you again. I think we're scheduled to meet another time, so thank you so much today.